Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Online Footprint Project. I'm your host, Ross McFarlane. Thank you so much for investing your time with us here today. So super excited. Sydney Wong is coming on sharing her story with us today. She actually moved to Silicon Valley with no visa and a dream, with a keen interest in tech. And now she actually helps startups with really just helping guide them through because there's that, with 90% of the problems that startups face, she can help with that. So Sydney, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, yeah, really interesting story about, just moving to Silicon Valley with, a really shoestring budget. So I'd love to hear about how that came out about. And have you always had a keen interest in business, or is this just something that was kind of a more of a spur of the moment kind of decision?
Yeah, so when I graduated from McGill, I did have a business degree, and then I moved to Paris, where I did my MBA in
Yep.
my third language. And then when I came back to Montreal, I was working in kind of the only industry that was really booming at the time, which was in technology. So
Okay.
any kind of like business or marketing or things like that were very, very unstable if we were to apply for visas anywhere. It was just during that time, 2008, 2009, more than that. And then, so after I finished my last contract, which was in marketing automation, Salesforce, CRM, those kinds of things, I already was exposed to a few, different kinds of tech conferences that the States had, which were just overwhelmingly just over the top. It was kind of
Yeah.
like if our prime minister were to go anywhere, that's how any of those conferences kind of seemed like.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so there was a lot to learn, a lot to absorb, and things were changing so fast. So I had a friend who said that if I was very interested in learning more about tech and about startup, which I was, then I had to move there. So I bought a one-way ticket, and
Yep.
then I just moved in with him. Felt like that was the right place to be invited. When
That's
you
awesome.
don't have a job or a visa or any of those things in the
Yeah,
horizon at
you figured it
all.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Met other Canadians who also were figuring it out.
Yeah, nice. That's really cool. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you got to take a chance. You got to jump in the deep end sometimes, and you won't know unless you do risk that. So, I did the same. Would be close to 6 months now, where yeah, I basically just gave up a six-figure cushy sales job, and I was like, now look, it's just needs to be done. So, it's awesome that you took that step, and obviously it's worked out for you. So I'm really happy in that regard.
Yeah, I also read your ebook for about the sales
Oh,
training. It's
yeah.
really good.
Oh, thanks. I did that basically. Please ignore all the grammatical errors because it was a really sunny day. I just cracked a beer and I just sat out in the sun just with my shirt off, like, yes, some sun finally.
That's
So,
probably why it was all in Word, right? You're like, wow, it's like I got his notepad. I feel so. It's a personal touch.
exactly. Just me being me. So, no, that's cool. Well,
Yeah,
as long as you got some value out of it, that's the main thing.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, cool, cool. Because we're actually doing a sales group training tomorrow. So if you got the time, you're more than welcome to jump in. We'll do that on Zoom as well, just so that way everyone can jump on board and yeah, we can learn a few things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Hey, look, enough about me. This is about you. I don't want to steal the show. So yeah, I mean, I guess so. From there, that's really cool. So once you did actually move, so what happened? Like, was it that you started, you found a network of people and they're all in the same sort of boat, and you kind of progressed from there, or did you get a job when you first started there, or how did it all come about, Sydney?
So going there, I wasn't really like sure kind of what to expect. It was my first time like going there. However, I met a lot of people through Meetup, through couch surfing, through different things. It was funny that everybody who was from a different country who came to the valley at the time, the first five things that would ever come out of your mouth was like, "So do you have a visa? How do you get here? How do you like?" It was like if they had an accent or anything, you knew that that was like the first thing that's kind of coming out, and then
Okay.
everyone else would always be listening. So those were my non-American friends, and and so then I was applying for different jobs, and I did get interviews with really interesting positions,
Cool.
and the way that they have decipher like how they're going to test you, which I wasn't really used to, being having like technical tests for non-technical jobs, for example,
Yeah.
and
Strange.
how complicated the H-1B versus the TN visas were. It was all just super complex. But what was most interesting, I gotta say, was when I went everywhere in an Uber. There were like over 10,000 Ubers at the time,
Yep.
and everybody had their own story, their own structure, and well, not their own structure, but kind of their own goal
Yeah.
And same thing when I went to meetup groups. It was a very non-Canadian style, as in we are very conservative in a lot of different aspects, especially in business and the way that we're how we're taking certain kinds of risks and stuff. And
Yeah.
they are throwing everything out there. They take all different kinds of like criticisms, feedbacks, praise, all these different things. And
Right.
so when it came to seeing the style and the structure and the way people were very focused on their goals and the means to their goals were very humbling. And it taught me a lot of things. I learned so much from my Uber drivers. I learned so much
That's so
from,
good.
yeah, because like everybody, whether you were a house cleaner on WAG, whether you were a driver, or whether you were not a dog walker on WAG or a house cleaner on TaskRabbit, they always told you what their end goal was. I'm paying off my student loans. I'm trying to save up to start a business, and I'm trying to buy a house and all of these things. And so I thought it was really impressive how they were very focused on what their goal was and how to get there. And then in terms of the meetups, they were very concise on, I need to get research for this. This is the step that I'm at. This is the step I need to be at. And so I didn't see that a lot. And I wanted to kind of bring more of those kinds of analytics into this kind of industry,
Cool.
because we see that we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming up, and yet there's not that kind of funding that is matching the growth. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. They're very two different things, because really where you want to go and what's available isn't necessarily going to help facilitate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. So I guess, I mean, it's really interesting to be sitting in Ubers all the time and just learning people's stories. So is that when it kind of dawned on you that that was what you wanted to do in regards to helping startups?
Yeah, I thought that living there was a different kind of world. It felt like I got to take a peek of what the future would kind of look like, and I got to feel what it was going towards all of the time. And so I wanted to help move that kind of innovation forward. And that's why I wanted to work in the startup industry.
Yeah. Okay. No, phenomenal. So I guess tell me a bit. So you're you're in Montreal at the moment. So tell me a bit about Montreal. I'd love to hear just something a bit off topic in regards to what your experiences are there and your perceptions of it. I'd love to hear more, because I got a few friends from Canada. I haven't visited there myself, but I've done a fair bit of traveling. So I always love just learning about different cultures and things like that.
Yeah, so Montreal is very, very interesting. It feels like a really big city and a very small city at the same time. So a
Okay.
lot like San Francisco. It's physically small, but it feels like it's much bigger than it actually is. Like it's almost the same size actually. And so there's a lot of French influence that's coming on here that takes a very interesting spin in terms of the startup industry. So for example, there is a really great and unknown kind of story about why Montreal grew to be one of the best places to start a video game company of all different kinds of industries. So
Yeah. Cool.
depending on which industry that you are in, you should really think hard of where you should live.
Okay.
And if you don't know the great tax implications and all of these things that you could get. And so, for example, they were really, really interested in having French influence here. So they subsidized the wages of every single Ubisoft employee like decades ago.
Yeah.
Just a
Wow.
long time ago, when they wanted to take their stuff and just kind of leave Montreal because it wasn't providing them the same benefit, I guess, that they were expecting.
Yep.
And so then there were a couple of protests later. There were a whole bunch of new laws that got changed and updated, where if you were in video game, every single employee that you have, you got something like 36% subsidies from the government. And so immediately when you go into that industry, you knew that you were going to be paid higher than any other startup company, because the government is helping subsidize your wages. And so that was applicable to kind of every single employee level of the entire company. And that's on top of getting research and development grants and all of the stuff. So a lot of American companies do hire tech and innovation kind of workforce here in Canada, because they get to have really great tax benefits in terms of research and innovation. Development is another thing. That's R&D. It's more the art here, I would say. And so that's kind of how they say, what do rich people think of? They don't think of how to make more money. They think of how to save their money.
Okay.
They know how to keep it.
Yeah. Keep it in house. Yeah, fair enough. No, that's cool. I mean, yeah, because it's something that with the show, I really want to take it in more of a direction where I love to share people's stories, but I also want to I learn more about their perspectives as well. Because it's one of those things that it was half the reason I got into it, but I haven't really capitalized on that yet. So that's a really interesting point of view on it, and I'm glad I brought that up. Yeah. So yeah, I guess Sydney, tell us a bit about your startup. So from you had the idea, and then how did you then, in essence, start that itself? For everyone listening at home that they're thinking maybe they want to start their own business, what did you really do to start ticking all the boxes to make sure that you were on the right direction, on the right path?
So I had figured out who I wanted to help. That was where my starting point was. I wanted to help early stage startups.
Yeah.
I found that that's where there was a lot of pain points, and so I wanted to figure out which was the biggest pain point. I actually traveled then again on a shoestring budget across Canada, which is very big, and going
Yeah.
from Montreal all the way to my hometown in Victoria, BC, and all I had was just kind of going through different kinds of startups, incubators, accelerators, and investors. So people who are within that ecosystem and understanding what is the biggest pain point and why are you having trouble here and why do you think other people are having trouble here. And what's really interesting about first-time entrepreneurs is the way they answer questions. And because I don't do market research for other, industries, I can't really say maybe it's the same for everybody, but they say, well, this is where I'm at, but this is why I think someone else is having trouble. Tom next door, this is why he's having trouble.
Okay.
It's not your pain. And so that I thought was really interesting in terms of
That's startup
they
for
would
you.
they would tell you a story about a whole make-believe person instead of this is where I'm having trouble because of these things. And
Yeah.
so I realized that nothing in terms of their early stages were being tracked, and they weren't able to prove their kind of traction out. So
Okay.
they always believe that, funding is really hard. Whether or not they've tried it, they would just believe it.
Yeah.
Whether
Okay.
it's kind of like getting into college is really hard, but I'm not going to fill out the form. I don't want to look at
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea. I'm just going to assume it's hard, and then that's it. I'm just going to close that door.
that. Yeah, exactly. And it was hard. It's a whole other thing, it's because it was really hard for Tom. And then what happens is that they say, okay, well, great. I really want to know where my business is at, and I don't know how to get to that next step. So that next step is a very questionable next step, whether that be funding, whether that be launch, whether that be MVP, or whether that just be getting to your very first sale.
Yeah.
And so then I put it around to kind of ask the investors, why is it very difficult to get funding now than it was years ago and things like that. And I thought that if there were more options, if you went to a grocery store, you just had more options, you would just buy more things.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not true.
Yeah.
Their problem was that they didn't have time to try each of these things. So
Okay.
each person at a typical firm would get over 200 applications per person.
Wow.
Not per firm, per person in that firm. And that was happening for the last couple of years. So they would only be able to fund maybe 50% of the projects that they wanted because they didn't have time to go through the rest. And I asked, well, what would be helpful? And they said, if we weren't over solicited by entrepreneurs that were unprepared.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I built the product, which is how do you track preparedness? What is it measuring and how do you measure it and what kind of proof do you need to put your best foot forward when you're meeting investors for the first time?
Yeah. Okay. No, really good points, because that's the thing. They really need to have direction, be prepared, because it's funny to say that they blame others. It's a very standard mindset for when you're just starting out, because it's always it's someone else's fault or it's all these things out of my control. But the reality is, like when I've had many businesses in the past, and one of my biggest failures was I dropped about 40 grand building a platform, and the reality was it's just I didn't validate my market. I didn't do enough research. I just looked at the States and I looked at the UK and I thought, hey, this idea, they're smashing it, like they're doing really, really well. Therefore, ergo, I'm going to smash it. Especially when there was, like Google pages worth of these platforms in the States, and yet there weren't any in Australia. I thought, great, I have an untapped market. But without the market research, I just did it. I thought, oh, shit. So yeah, completely understand. So I guess it's good. So part of that process of the startup, journey is really education as well, because it's about really take things and accept that if you're doing something incorrectly, or you need to guide it one way or another, then really take ownership of that is such an important step for the startup entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I was saying this to William, who I'm going to do an interview with in the future. So
Yep.
what he was asking me was like, how does this how do working in kind of analytics in a very gray world make you feel? And I said, well, sometimes I feel like I'm building the very first weight scale, and when people go on the scale, they're mad at me for the number that they see,
Yep.
and that's how I feel. It seems crazy. Like, I don't know. I feel how that person feels right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, that's fair enough. Well, yeah, look, whenever you do the interview with your friend William, then let us know. I'm sure we'd all love to hear it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, yeah, I guess Sydney, from there. So you started the idea, and you've been helping startups. So how do you then really help them go to the next stage? Because obviously, if they, as you said, if they need VC funding or anything like that, it's available. But if they're sending in 200 applications per person, then obviously there's something there that they initially may be missing. So how is it that you then help educate them for the next step?
Yeah. So, so we measured four things for startups. We measured their product market fit. We're the only product on the market that actually measures their product market fit in the most kind of simplest way when they're at the early stage.
Yep.
Runway in terms of months. So the reason we did that is because QuickBooks, the accounting software, they did a study saying that over 50% of startups are financially illiterate. They don't know the difference between revenue and net profit. And so in terms of giving people numbers and monetary value, it doesn't mean anything, because like
Yep.
20,000 or 200,000 to you and me doesn't mean the same thing to Walmart. It just doesn't.
Of course.
And so
Yeah.
we can do different things than they can do, right? And and so that's why in terms of months, everyone knows how much time they have left. If you have 5 months left in your company and I have 5 months left in my company, it's the same time. That doesn't change. So that's why runway in months. Then the next one is conversion. So how committed are your potential customers? You can have potential customers or not to your product or service. So we measure this with signups. We measure this with letters of intent. We measure this with how we're tracking the different partnerships that are signing on, and of course pre-sales and pre-orders and orders. And then the last one is engagement. So engagement is usage plus retention. Are people returning? Do they like you, or is it a one-time thing?
Yeah.
Or or are they really using it, or they just signed on because they're your mom? So these are all different things that we measure. Yeah, because of course they're going to say, this is great, this is an amazing idea. And it maybe is, but you have to really find who are going to be your returning customers and who are going to be your long-term customers. So these are the measurements that we track before it gets to customer lifetime value, before it gets to customer acquisition, because you may not have those yet, but it's helping you get towards that. And that's those are the numbers that the investors really want to see. So all of our investors are very familiar with all of our metrics. And when we send them our startup, it comes with their Venture X report card. It comes with the pitch deck and a one-page universal application form. So you don't have to fill out all of these for every single investor that you need funding from. You just send out one, and we curate it to make sure that you match in terms of industry and amount.
Yeah, fantastic. Which is so important, because if you're mismatched, then things are going to go downhill real fast.
Yeah. It shows that you didn't do your research and you kind of wasted both of your time. And in terms of a startup, time is your only variable. You have to speed through everything. And if you kind of take too much to go the wrong way, then you kind of wasted all of your time and money.
Yeah, fair enough. So I guess with being in a service that is helping startups, so do you find that it's a lot of the time that startups are coming to you, or is it that you are actively out in the community networking, or is it more you're running ads in certain areas? How is it that you are getting customer acquisition yourself?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So actually, I've had this discussion with our UX designer very recently because she does UX design as well as the marketing. So she has a lot of great brainstorming and reflection. And so Oh, I used to in the past year go to a lot of networking events. There's a lot that's happening here in Montreal. You can go to a networking event like every week if you really wanted to. And
Okay.
then I realized how ineffective that was because of, well, it's the same people. And and also after
Yeah,
they know you, right? So I used to do live presentations in front of groups of 100 at a time. And so then after a while, it's like everybody. And then, but I found was really effective, and you have to be able to do a lot of trial and error, and preferably have somebody on your team or a trusted friend in the industry to kind of debrief with what's working and what's not working. So I really like going on different Facebook groups and online communities to answer questions and
cool.
send tips, tricks, and things like that. I have a whole list of them because I already write my Medium blogs. You know, the 3 most effective ways to get customers to give you referrals. When should you ask for a referral? Those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So help answer some questions and put yourself out as what we used to call a thought leader, and now we call influencers and different things like that, different buzzwords.
yeah,
But I think the most effective one is definitely from referrals from other partners.
cool.
And the reason for that is not a lot of people work in the very early stage. So we have partners that work in the later stages. So people are looking for 2 million plus, for
Yep.
example, or growth hacking partners, or partnerships at banks and things like that. And so those are the ones that I've found to have the best conversion rates is when they were actively seeking for help, but they kind of seek the wrong source because they
Yep.
didn't help them for that stage. And they referred them to us, which was very, very positive. So we're actually signing on more now from partnerships than anything else.
Great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Because that way, you're getting the right type of client in front of
Mm-hmm.
you as well. Because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one of the biggest issues I've observed, being in the online space for a few months now, is that getting the right type of client is just so important. Whereas
Yeah.
before being in sales, it was kind of just someone sat in front of you, you sell to them, and that's, it's you either can sell to them or they're someone that isn't going to be sold to. If they're just coming in, they're like, oh, well, isn't it your job to help? And it's like, mate, you've booked the appointment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, finding the right
Well, the
type of
more,
client is just so important. So
because it increases your cost of customer acquisition. You have to see it as if you spent money on a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, you spent, let's say, $100 or $1,000.
yeah,
And every 1,000 person that came in took your time to do a demo. However, they're not in your market, or they think they're in your market, but they're really not, or they weren't really a full-time entrepreneur anyway, but they want funding before they start. Whatever the reason is, you really spent that much, and your cost of customer acquisition is still like, undefined because you didn't
yeah,
find the right customer.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So important with that. So with Sydney, with this, because of the internet connection, we have done it on Zoom. So in regards to with everyone getting in contact with you after this, what I'll do is I'll actually upload this to the Niche Entrepreneur Community Facebook group.
Perfect.
And then
Great.
if you're able to drop all the links as well in there, just so that way people can click on it. So, Sydney, I guess for everyone listening in at home that is in the start phase, or they're considering being in the start phase, how do they get in contact with you so you can actually help them with their businesses? Now, is this something that you offer, internationally, or is this more just in Montreal?
So that's a very good question. When we vet our investors the same way we would vet our startups to be on our platform, we
Yep.
always ask them their preferences in terms of geography. And
Cool.
so almost all of them, like 90% of our investors currently are open to all countries. So
Fantastic.
more important that they have potential than their citizenship. Talent is borderless.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's great. And that's the thing, being in the online space, having the option to go international was just phenomenal, which is really why I was keen for it, because being based in Australia, it's like, well, I could, keep my audience in Australia, or I could just jump and go straight international. So it's amazing that you guys do offer that. So yeah, how is it that people do get in contact with you, Sydney?
So you can get in contact with us through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or our Medium blog. And then on our website, www.venturex.ca, there is a contact us form if you want to write something more personalized to you. And we tend to get back very, very quickly within the next couple days.
Yeah, fantastic. No, awesome. Well, Sydney, I just want to thank you for coming on. This has been a phenomenal chat. It's been a lot of fun. Um, I've certainly learned a lot. I didn't know that much about Canada, so that was really interesting. So yeah, I just want to thank you for your time today, and for everyone listening at home, thank you for investing your time with us today. So yeah, Sydney, I'd love to keep in touch just to see how things are progressing, because it sounds like it's going really well for you, and I'm interested to see the progress.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity, Ross.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. All right, thank you.